So number one is sunlight. I'll try and get as much sunlight as I can, but we live in Britain. I think the majority of people training are underfed, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah, people who are training full time especially, yeah. It's like, Christ, you've got a huge training load, like you need your calories.
Yeah. Ben Simons.
Jimmy G.
We're rolling.
Lyrical prodigy.
Thanks, mate. How you doing?
I'm good.
How's your day been so far?
Good. Yeah.
We've been up to.
I've been chatting to you.
Oh, yeah. Lucky me.
I know, right? You learnt much.
So much. Thank you for your time today, mate.
Pleasure.
I thought I would, well, there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to get you on the channel. First one, obviously, we've known each other for the better part of a decade now.
Wow.
Very good friends. Some would say best friends. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Took a while, didn't he? Really had to think about it. Not sure how I feel about that. And the second reason is there is an incredible amount of value I think you can offer. Obviously, you are a two-time Olympian, hopefully three-time Olympian with the upcoming Winter Olympics in Beijing in about 7 months' time. In the sport of bobsleigh, hence the presence of this lovely bit of kit here.
That's right.
But when we started, basically, I was there when you got in the team as well. We basically kind of came into it in 2012 in the same year. And my experience of you during my 2 years as part of the British bobsleigh team was you were basically like the professor of the squad that was so into the self-education of how to basically kind of plug all the gaps and do all those extra tiny little things that got those extra fractions of % in performance in terms of different recovery, what we now know as biohacks, right? Mm-hmm. So what I thought that we could talk about today is 3 different things. Firstly, we'll cover a little bit about your training. Mm-hmm. Secondly, we'll cover a little bit about your nutrition, your eating habits. And the third thing is these kind of recovery and biohacks that I mentioned. Sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Happy to talk about training?
Very happy, yeah.
Fantastic. So first and foremost then, what does your training look like now, and how did it differ 10 years ago?
10 years ago. So now there's, I'd say there's a higher volume of general work now. So when I talk about general and specific work is obviously stuff that's much closer to the event, being in biomechanics and in intensity. And the general work is just kind of basic fitness, bodybuilding, prehab type of work. Mm-hmm. And so my volume of that general work is much higher now. So I think as a youngster, I think it's the same for everybody. You just want bang for your buck. You want to push adaptation the whole time, and you want to compete the whole time. And what that meant for me was that I got hurt quite a bit, and that led to lengthy periods of rehabilitation, from which I actually adapted really well and got some great performance benefits, which was a surprise because they were completely non-specific. It's essentially just like a slow twitch factory doing core work and local muscular endurance. And yet I came off extended periods of that type of training. I came out of an extended period of that type of training after 6 months of no running or any explosive work with a standing long jump PB. And it just made me think, why am I just literally searching for intensity and high outputs day in, day out here, when actually, as long as my body's in a good place and I'm not hurt, and I've got a stable platform from which to take off from, then I'm good to go. So I've been less concerned with just output, intensity, and more with just stringing together consistent periods of training with enough general work to keep me in one piece.
Okay, so as a member of the British bobsleigh team, obviously phenomenal level of intensity required. And you're saying that instead of just having a training focused of attempting to hit a high level of intensity, kind of 90% plus output all the time, you're now just like, as long as I do a little bit of kind of like functional bodybuilding, prehab stuff, make sure my core's strong, basically build a bit of kind of holistic resilience and robustness, you think that you're naturally wired in a way that you can keep that output the same. So you got injured, you had an extended period of time where you didn't do any explosive work, you came back and then you got a standing long jump PB, which is could be like the most explosive thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So that just changed my perspective on things. Also, as you get older, you need more time to recover, and the general training elements give me that opportunity. It gives an opportunity to get a load of blood flow, very low fatigue. There's endocrine system benefits, so hormonal benefits to those sessions as well, which is something that's quite important now over 30 to help recovery. So that's probably the main difference. It's more the volume of training spent in those two different areas.
So less time in your training week now is spent on super high intense stuff.
Yes.
Okay. And when did that change happen? Was there a certain injury when you decided to kind of like post injury, you decided to test that?
It probably happened, after that first, after that big injury. Say big injury, it was a kind of slow burner. It was osteitis pubis, so it's quite debilitating, and it kind of
explain what that is.
Inflammation of your pubic joint, essentially, and the structures around it. So adductors, lower abdominals, all of that area. It's all just turned off. There's tendon issues going on all of those attachments. Very debilitating issue. Can end a lot of careers. So that was why I had 6 months literally away from running or anything explosive. And I think, since then, it just made me realise that just searching for intensity all the time was not the way forward. And there are a lot of people who are just super responders, and you can basically, I've found that there's so many different ways that I've trained, and I've still got more explosive, even if they're completely non-specific. And there are a few, I've heard that echoed by a few people. You'd see is definitely depends how you're wired, but some people just respond, and more often than not, it's just a stimulus that I haven't had before, so it's variety. If it's a novel stimulus, I respond almost immediately. I can respond in 24 hours to a novel stimulus. Like my outputs will be through the roof if I do something that's completely different. Obviously, the risk with that is you just don't know what the adaptation process will look like.
Yeah.
So you could knock yourself backwards because it could fatigue you so much. But I've just noticed I did, just last year, we were in Aldershot actually doing a training camp, and we got taken through like a military fitness session. We got given the like England rugby anaerobic fitness test to do, which was like repeated sprints, which was brutal. Then we went through like a partner kind of functional fitness competition, which is like a CrossFit WOD really. The next day I ran the fastest 30 I'd run in 4 years.
Really? Yeah. Okay, it's interesting.
So I turned up there just expecting to be shattered, because I'd just done probably the worst session possible for explosive power the day before. But I hadn't done a session like that ever.
That's so funny. So it's like it just, because even listening to it, obviously I'm familiar with this kind of the general concept, having spoken to you about it before, but the hilarious thing is that it's so counterintuitive. You think to get better at speed, you have one person who does just speed, and then you have one person who does speed and this and aerobic capacity and batters themselves the day before and whatever, and they end up performing better. It's completely the opposite of what you predict logically, right? Yeah.
But I think that if you look at most research into adaptation, it's never done on elite athletes in whatever sport they're in. Elite athletes are born hyper-specialized because it's 90% genetic anyway. And so I don't think it really matters what they do. For most of them, they tend to adapt towards their strengths. So, I mean, a prime example, like someone like Tyson Gay, the sprinter, trained, if you look at his training methods, it was a bit like 800-meter training, just loads of like speed endurance, like long speed endurance. It wouldn't even be classed as speed endurance. You'd probably class it as intensive tempo. Like it wasn't fast work. And then even like a Safa Powell's group, like his coach didn't believe in running any sprints to 60 meters, like I think over 60 meters at top speed. So it was all conditioning all winter, and then they'd come out onto the track in the summer. And the argument for him was people pull hamstrings at 60, so we don't go to 60 in training because it's too risky. So what most people would say would be, well, actually, no, you need to actually expose them to that risk gradually, so then they're inoculated, so to speak. So then they don't pull a hamstring. But that wasn't his philosophy. and look at how some of his athletes are run.
So generally, in terms of the overarching question of like,
basically, I suppose you could argue if Tyson Gay, if you basically gave Tyson Gay loads of hyper-specific work, I mean, and this is just conjecture, rather than the distance stuff that he did, like, because he's just like literally like such super high output, like ridiculous downforce into the track. Is he just going to get hurt? Are you just going to run him into the ground? Do you know what I mean? Like these people are born to do what they're going to do.
So regardless, if you have a variety of different kind of stimuluses, people are going to respond to the way that they're wired.
Yeah, so that's been the kind of way that I've looked at it over the last few years, for sure.
So you being someone who is obviously wired in a very explosive athlete. So you're a GB bobsleigh athlete now. You're a 2-time, hopefully soon to be 3-time Olympian. Your background before that was sprinting and long jump, etc. You can give yourself now, instead of just having that one stimulus, you can give yourself a variety of stimulus. Build a little bit more of a comprehensive, holistic body by doing more core work, a bit more functional bodybuilding, a little bit of like some novel stuff that's new, and yet you're still always going to adapt in that direction because that's the way that you've naturally got a predisposition.
If anything, I'll adapt the better, I would say.
Yeah, okay.
Because what I find is if I get into a very specific block of training, I plateau very quickly. And then what tends to happen is when I plateau, I start getting overuse injuries. So as soon as I get used to the stimulus, the overload gets too much and I'll get overuse injuries. But if I feed myself some variety, that's how I kind of keep those at bay.
Okay. So that's an interesting one, and that's something that I think I'm wired in a similar way to you.
I would say so. Have you done your neurotyping?
Yeah. And I was novelty seeker.
Yeah. Type
2B.
Yeah. Type 1B.
Type 1B.
Yeah, so I'm the same.
Okay. So
Type 1B, and it makes sense. So you'll be dopamine dominant. You're 100%. A novelty seeker.
Yeah.
You like variety. You're very elastic, same as me. You like using stretch reflex. You're wired in a very similar way. So I think you can understand that. I mean, you warm up for a weightlifting session with sprinting drills.
Yeah. So exactly. So for those of you that don't know the neurotype test, this was Thibodeau, right?
Yeah. Christian Thibodeau. Yeah.
Like a disciple of Charles Poliquin.
Yeah, it's from the same. They're both from Montreal, I believe. So it was. He built neurotyping kind of on top of the Braveman test, which was a kind of personality test thing was developed as, but it was kind of based on the personality traits that would indicate dominance of certain neurotransmitters. And I think he basically took it a step further. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting. People's views are split on it, but I find it very interesting, and it seems to ring true. Like you're an absolute typical type 2B.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, with what you've said, if I have
type 1B.
Type 1B.
Yeah.
If I have exactly the same as you were just saying then, if I have a training program that is specifically focused towards one thing with a limited amount of variation in that, I can get. To be honest, I don't know if I've done it long enough to get bored, but I do get overuse injuries if I do that, and I love that. And as soon as I do anything new, I could run an 800 meters, but I just feel better the next day.
Yeah, definitely. So it's typical, but that's not something that's explored. There's not much. There's research out. It'd be hard to really research, wouldn't it? It would be tough, but you need to take the way you're wired and your own individual experiences into account, which I think not enough people do. I think having the confidence in what feels good for you is what's worked well in the past is better than
if you're in touch with your own body, what is intuitive.
A bunch of people that have
nothing to do with you. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so that is a general principle of if you're wired in a certain way and you have a predisposition to a certain kind of response, you will respond in that direction, even if you do kind of a lot more and you have a more, and for me personally, my feeling of well-being and happiness is much greater allowing myself to go in lots of different directions with training anyway. But in terms of for your stuff, that is why we're here today, that is what I want to talk about. Can you walk us through very, very briefly what the training week of an Olympic bobsleigh athlete looks like? What does it look like for you right now? Okay,
so for me personally right now, I'm tied to the fact that we have sessions on the push track which are booked. And with half of my team being based in different areas around the country, we've booked Tuesday, Wednesday, which are the 2 days everybody can make, and they're back-to-back, so you can stay overnight and get the push training sessions in. So that wouldn't be ideal, having those two push sessions, big intense push sessions, one day after another. Like you'd want a day of recovery at least in between.
So it's not the way that you design it, but it's just the way that it has to be.
It's the way that it is. So I've got to roll with that. Yeah, essentially. So the way I've done that is by using the Tuesday as a potentiation day for the Wednesday push session. So you could call it a primer. So, like the day before competition, you may use a primer session, which maybe an Olympic lifting would be working up to your opening weight. In sprinting, it might be a few block starts. But basically use that concept. Try and use a Tuesday, high intensity but low volume, to potentiate performance on the Wednesday, which would then be the impact day. So I'd do full intensity, full volume for that Wednesday session. So get the push track done, then go lift intense, Olympic lifts, most of the strength stimulus. Thursday then becomes an active recovery day, which involves a kind of functional bodybuilding session at very low weight, lasting about 45 minutes just to get a nice sweat on. Is that session just with the barbell that you mentioned? Yeah, just with the barbell, a lot of twists. I think it comes from throwing originally, like a barbell thrower series. So barbell twist, overhead twist, mid-level twist around the middle, like a hammer kind of. So lots of rotation stuff. Lots of rotation, which is something that's missing elsewhere within the program. So when you start pushing sleds, with you being actually braced into the sled and stabilized, your oblique slings are doing less work, so your core's doing less stabilization. And what I found in the past was then that actually caused a certain amount of inhibition then in my core, which contributed to my adductor issues. But sprinters wouldn't get this. No, but that's because they're not offloading on something. So right, when they get opposite arm, opposite leg. So they're doing this. So sprint, natural sprinting mechanics are doing this, and there's a little bit, there's natural rotational forces there anyway. But when you're locked into a sled, they kind of switch off. Yeah. So there's a counter movement with rotation in, and there's still a counter movement on the sled, upper body and hips. But you don't then get the stretch with the opposite arm, opposite leg, right? Which gets your anterior oblique sling to then stabilize. So your core stops working in the same manner that it would when you're sprinting. So I found that there is a missing link with the rotational aspect. So I make sure I get my rotation in during those general strength sessions, those very general conditioning sessions. So then that lasts for about 45 minutes. Just get a sweat on. That's once a week? Mm-hmm. Okay, nice. Get the hormones pumping. And then, shut it down. And then I do another high intensity day Friday, which is, again, it either involves sprinting or pushing, and then a dynamic strength day. So that would be lighter weight, just really concentrating on velocity, bar velocity. But still like compound movements and some accessory stuff. Yeah. But just like as in speed on the concentric, you mean? Or? So for the Olympic lift derivatives, it's lighter. So it's snatch based. Okay. And from a hang. So just working on that, like snap, that hip extension. Essentially, and a longer pull, just a longer pull in general, because snatch is inherently just more of a long arc movement as opposed to a power clean. It's just covering both ends of that spectrum of how you pull in the bar, and then the lighter weight just building velocity throughout the whole lift. My landing, I do a split snatch actually, just because, as we've talked about before, I don't really like squat position to land in. Oh, so you actually catch the snatch in a split? Yeah. Okay. Which I just feel better in. So in terms of some of the meaty stuff then, obviously a lot of the guys that will be watching this now will be interested in some more kind of, the easy to resonate gym work. In terms of like the big heavy stuff that you do, what does that look like? In terms of, obviously you've got cleans, you say you don't squat that much right now. No, so me personally is very much, it's been adapted around me as an individual, so it doesn't look like a lot of other bobsleighers will train. And I've hardly done any squatting or squatting movements at all this year, just because my knees are dust, and that's helped. So I want to delve into that now, because it is since my 10 years my 10 years or so of squatting, and it always feeling inconsistent and flipping painful. And obviously you and me spoke a couple of weeks ago, because you came down to mine and we had a chat, because we're best friends.
That's what best friends do. And you even said to me just before this, actually today, you were like, Jim, you are the perfect example of someone who basically regularly squatting will fuck you up. I've really kind of come to the point of thinking that everyone does back squats because of that, everyone thinks it's so common because it is a very common, popular exercise, but it's actually an incredibly complex thing that shouldn't be an intro lift.
No.
And it is not something that does suit everyone's body shape and biomechanics.
For some people it does. So for them, yeah, crack on. But for other people, somebody like yourself, long legs, long femurs, very explosive and bouncy. So you're very plyometric. So you really like
this guy.
You like producing force in the top range.
Yeah.
You know, you like using your stretch reflex. So then when you're going down, and also just the way your hips are set. Like
anterior pelvic tilt, or
more that you butt wink,
right?
So obviously the way that your hips sit in your pelvis, like your pelvis just can't rotate through your hips when you're at the bottom. Right? So that just puts people would argue whether it's an issue having a butt wink at the bottom, but I have the same thing, and I found that my SIJ will get knocked out of kilter when I'm full squatting. So I've just seen that correlation there. So you're a classic person that would get annihilated by full squatting all the time. So you would be a typical track and field guy that would quarter or half squat.
Yeah. So long femurs, naturally explosive, like power output. But
when I say explosive, it's usually the guys that you call elastic. So obviously there's super explosive squatters out there that can like jump out the room, especially from like standing. But somebody that is more just elastic based, somebody that's more built like a track athlete. Yeah.
So everyone, obviously this, like in terms of your main objective right now, 4-year Olympic cycle, right? You're like 7 months out from the next games. Your focus is performance. I believe that everyone's is to a point, but obviously most people completely transparently also have the aesthetics point of view.
Yeah.
So if I'm like, right, I'm in this position now, I still want to train legs. I like being strong. I like being powerful, but squats are just flipping annihilating me, but I don't want to lose muscle and I don't want to lose size in my lower body. What could I do to replace that?
Just say that again.
So if I'm going to stop squatting, what can I replace squats with to make sure that I don't lose muscle in my legs?
Well, anything. Well, you can just go
lunges, step ups.
The first
prowlers.
thing is to go unilateral.
Okay, yeah. So it's lots of single leg stuff.
Yeah, so you could literally go split squat.
Okay.
Because you don't go as deep, and you're in that split stance, which is just better for people that aren't as aren't built to squat. You could hip thrust.
Okay.
And if you're just worried about your quads, you could just do isolated quad work.
So overall, your training, you've got sprint work, you've got push work, you've got the kind of the Olympic lifting stuff in there for the kind of the power output work. You've got some functional bodybuilding with like the barbell and the kind of the twists and stuff. Anything else I'm missing?
Throws, explosive throws.
Right, okay, nice.
Yeah, that's a huge component. So shot or medicine ball throws.
Okay.
Plyometrics, sprints.
Okay. And so that's what your training looks like now. Was it different? Is there anything that you're doing now that you were like, flipping heck, man, I wish I knew this, 10 years ago? Or was it pretty much the same kind of skeleton program? You've just tweaked it to make it more specific to you?
The biggest thing I learned that's changed over the last 10 years is self-management and seeking out the best medical professionals that you can.
Okay.
Or the best professionals just around training in general. Because there are some absolute geniuses out there.
Like physios, you mean? Or?
Yeah, mostly physios. And some S&C guys, the same. They can really take a look at things with a wide lens and see what you really need. Okay. Which actually, so the guy I work with at the moment, Dara Curran, who's a physio, he was an S&C guy before. So he has both lenses.
Okay, so that's a great scope to look at. So
I write my program and he looks over it.
Okay, well, and tweaks it if need be, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what training looks like now. Lots of pushing, lots of intense kind of sprint work, intense lifting, but also you said that there has been a transition towards a more kind of like holistic, I just want to keep my whole body healthy and resilient and robust. And then you'll still, regardless of the fact that through a training week or through a training month, you'll be doing less super intense work, but you'll still adapt in that way.
Yeah. So another thing that I changed over the years was that I didn't how many weeks of intensification I put myself through. So traditionally I did 3 weeks, and I cut that to 2. So I only ever do 2 weeks of intensification before I back off for a week.
Okay. So like 2 weeks of hard training and then a week kind of tapered.
Yeah. So reduced by about 50%.
Okay.
Yeah.
The volume is reduced by 50%.
Yeah, volume. Yeah, intensity stays high.
Yeah. Okay. So that was very much a Charles Poliquin thing. I remember, and so I did a video on this recently. Like, if you are kind of needing to deload or taper in some way, what variable, reps, sets, kind of weight, tempo, whatever, which one do you drop, and it is the number of sets. So everything else kind of stays the same. And if you were doing 5 sets of 5, you just simply drop that down to like 2 or 3 sets. Yeah.
So essentially for me, it goes week 1 intro, 75% volume. Week 2 is like your impact. That would be 100% of volume. And then week 3 would be 50%.
Okay.
But that's when you're on like quality reps, autopilot.
Okay.
And then you go then back into intro. And that's when exercises are going to change slightly intricately, because then that's the next like cycle, so to speak. And then that acts as a bit of a regen, because obviously when you're hitting new exercises, they're new, and so you can't get quite as much output on them. Yeah, it'll be week 2 then when your output goes up. Okay. Yeah. That's borrowed from Stu McMillan, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about eating, nutrition. What does a GB bobsleigh athlete eat?
Depending on what your weight is.
Yeah.
So if you're underweight, you eat as much as you can. If you're overweight, you don't. Not many of the lads are. No, some of the lads are overweight. So weight for a 4-man bobslayer, which would be sitting in this bad boy. The perfect weight would be 103 kilos.
Right.
So if there's somebody in the sled that's 110, that gives me the opportunity to be sub 100 kilos essentially, because basically there's a maximum weight of sled and crew together. But me at 94 kilos, I'm very underweight, almost 10 kilos underweight compared to my competitors and teammates. So for me, eating is just literally as many calories. One of the biggest struggles in my career is calories and getting calories on. That might have been the most difficult part, like eating enough.
And what, over the last kind of 5-10 years?
Yeah.
So it's so funny because obviously like you are like 93, 94, so we said 94. So 94 kilo guy, lean, like you are what most people would class as like a big, strong athlete. But you're saying for your sport, you're nearly 10 kilos too light.
Yeah.
So for you, it's kind of nutrition. Obviously, I imagine that you still want to be fairly healthy, fairly balanced, but it is in terms of just flipping volume. You've just got to make sure that you hit a certain amount of food to ensure that you don't drop weight, because obviously you're trying to put on or maintain, and you've got a super high amount of training load that you've got to do, which is burning through that fuel. So you've just got to keep the calories coming in.
This is the difficulty. In the summer, my training load is high, and then it's difficult to get the calories in. And in the winter, it's just we're in the cold. We've got long training days. And again, it's difficult to get the calories in. It's difficult to be healthy with that. Much more difficult in the winter because we out of hotels.
I remember.
So all of the food you eat, you have no choice with. It's out of a hotel, and hotels tend to use cheaper ingredients. And then the amount of McDonald's that we eat on season is ridiculous.
Big up McDonald's plug right there.
And it's just because it's just convenience.
Right.
And people will judge you for it, but they can't because they're not in that situation. It's like if you've not eaten enough all day and you're traveling 10 hours between one track and another, you've got to stop and get something on the motorway.
Yeah.
You just eat at McDonald's, and that happens time and time again. I go through like 5 months of every year really not eating particularly healthily and not having a lot of choice over what I eat. So when I do come back in the summer, I try and eat clean. But then that becomes more difficult to get the prerequisite calories on board.
So right now, walking us through the day.
So I'm balanced every meal.
Yeah.
What
does that look like? What's breakfast look like for you?
So breakfast will be. I'll start with like eggs and bacon usually.
Nice. How many eggs?
2.
How many pigs?
I don't
2
know.
eggs?
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, because it's in a sandwich.
Oh.
Yeah, so like I said, I go balanced every meal.
Nice.
So because like if I've tried the low carb thing in the morning and I just have no energy, so and like we've both done gene analysis, and mine would indicate that I'd be better off with low carb. Well, I certainly,
by the gene analysis, you mean the DNA fit test? Yeah, cool.
So I certainly don't feel good on that. So if I try and train in the morning after having a low carb, if I'm not going to train in the morning, I'll cut the carbs out. But I train full time, so I train in the morning. Yeah. So yeah, it's always balanced. Essentially, every meal is balanced for me.
By balance, you mean protein, carbs, fats?
Macro is pretty well balanced. My protein I've always had high protein intake. That's just been a habit from a teenager because I've known its importance. So I don't have to worry about too much about that. I do supplement. I have collagen protein around my training. Okay. That's because of my tendon issues as well. And then in the evening, I do tend to have a few more carbs. As
carb backload a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, just because that brings on a little bit of drowsiness, as we know with the all about this in neurotransmitter.
Yep. Bit of a dump of melatonin, sleep hormone, when you have carbs in the evening, so it's like aids good quality sleep.
Exactly. Yeah. So I hit that quite hard in the evening, and then recently, and this is literally just to get the calories up because I'm just underfed every day, is just ice cream, because it's the only thing I can palate after a massive meal.
Nice. And
so I just try and go for the plainest dairy ice cream there is, like a decent company that's got no as little additives as possible, no carrageenan, which, if you don't know, is a seaweed extract that is very inflammatory on your gut. Creates texture in most ice creams.
So it's a seaweed extract that's used for texture in ice creams, but it's really
inflammatory.
Okay.
So just check that.
I think I heard Matt Fraser, actually, obviously 5 times CrossFit Games champ. I think when he was kind of back in the day when he just first started, actually, I think he was smashing a pint of ice cream every night because, again, he said it was kind of the only thing he could palate after feeling quite full.
No, it's exactly that, and I don't know what it is about it. You can just palate ice cream. Yeah.
You're not chewing; it's fairly fresh and kind of minty taste. It's not particularly strong. I could imagine. You can go,
and I literally the stuff I get, it would just like literally be like clotted cream dairy ice cream. So it's as close to cream and sugar as I can get. Just because I don't want any of the other additives in there.
Okay.
It's not ideal. It's not ideal, but it's what it needs must.
It's what you need to do, mate, to get to that third games.
Needs must, mate.
Okay, so paint us a picture then. So you've got egg and bacon sandwich for breakfast. What time of the day is that?
So do you know what? I'll talk you through it. So because I'm a big coffee guy as well. So as soon as I wake up, I get some calories in me before I eat my coffee, because I don't want a massive cortisol spike. So what I used to do is the first all I could think of was coffee. I'd get it down me. But it's probably not the best thing for cortisol when as soon as you've woken up, just like smashing a massive spike of caffeine. So I'll try and get some animal protein in ASAP as soon as I get up. And that's usually quark, yogurt, or cottage cheese. Or just something I can spoon quickly and get in before my coffee, because all I'm thinking about is my coffee. Then I have my coffee. I have a strong coffee, percolator made with cream in it. Single cream. Bang, I get that down me. Then I'll have my essentially second breakfast, which will be the cooked breakfast. So that'll be egg and bacon, or just scrambled eggs, or poached egg and salmon. Pretty much always on toast. And I'll probably eat too much bread, too much toast. But do you know what? My experience with toast, with wheat, with gluten has only ever been positive. Like, I'm regular, my digestion's good, and I don't feel sluggish. When I eat wheat, potatoes
very different to my experience.
But potatoes, I'm different. Like I will feel sluggish after potatoes.
Interesting.
So if I'm going to eat potatoes, it's usually in the evening.
Okay.
Yeah. And then lunch will usually be on the fly because I'm up here training. So I try and pre-package some essentially meat, carbs, and veg. So it'll be usually broccoli, chicken in like maybe peri-peri sauce, and some rice a lot of the time, and then I'll heat that and eat it at lunch. Never heating in plastic, always in Pyrex.
Good man. For the BPA.
Yeah. Coffee, train, mass shake, so collagen, liquid collagen shot, bang.
Collagen is a protein source that you think is what you're having it basically to help joints and tendons and like connective tissues.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So SIS.
Do you have that mixed in with whey?
No,
whey protein?
SIS literally do a shot, which is a 20 gram collagen or 30.
Oh, really? Do they?
Shot. It's liquid.
Oh, I didn't realize
with
that.
vitamin C.
Okay.
And you get that straight in before your session. So the idea is that is digesting and being used when you're loading. Then your tendons and tissues are going to need it.
So, and then the mass shake is after training?
Yeah, so I hit that mass shake after training.
And then dinner?
Yeah, dinner again is, it'll be anything then. I'm pretty, whatever floats my boat at dinner. Fajitas, steak, casseroles, pulled pork, whatever it is. Nice. Spaghetti bolognese, I don't get too stuck on macros then. I just have as much food as I can.
Well, I mean, the more athletes, ironically, like the recreational, so I don't know if this is something that you've experienced, because I think this is why it's good kind of coming at this from this point of view, because we are in two very different worlds. And you are in the elite sporting world, and I am more in kind of like the recreational kind of sub-elite, looking at everything. And I would say recreational bodybuilders seem to spend more time focusing on the tiny little nuances of diet, like ensuring and like weighing food and macros and stuff like that. And elite sport, as in like, and when I say elite, I mean full time, which is exactly what you are, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be less of an issue, because half of the flipping struggle is just getting the calories in. It was 100%. Like you burn through it so quick, you're not really bothered about counting your flipping almonds.
It's much more intuitive and reactive, I think. Especially when you're 10 years in. Much more intuitive and reactive, and it's like there's only so much time when you're training full time. There's only so much time left in the day.
Yeah, man.
To get in a number of things, recovery, to do all your macros and stuff like that. A lot of people will just send a photo to their nutritionist now if you've got the funds to pay a nutritionist. But I think the majority of people training are underfed, if I'm honest.
Really?
Yeah, people who are training full time, especially. Yeah, you need enough calories to adapt. If you're in any sort of calorie deficit, it's just like, it'll keep you trim. But if your body's not going to be expending its resources on adapting.
Yeah. And I suppose that's one of the primary differences between, if your objective is, body composition, then that's one thing, and that becomes a much bigger issue, right? Macros and blah, blah, blah. And But on the flip side of that, if your main objective is performance, it's just like you can't be operating calorie deficit because you just won't adapt. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely not. No.
Okay, cool. So that's
or recover. So you're going to risk injuries.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just going to feel tired, and again, you're just not, the process isn't going to be
I've seen that, especially I think in track and field. I've seen that time and time again. People are absolutely obsessive with skin folds. The whole body weight, even during their just preparation periods. It's like, Christ, you've got a huge training load. Like, you need your calories.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the priority. Body composition is it's a metric that's interesting, but it's not the objective.
Well, I remember Craig, our friend Craig Pickering.
Big up Craig Pickering.
We both know and love. He was talking about when they used to put a lot of pressure on him to drop his skin folds, essentially, because I think Craig was holding a little bit more fat than the other athletes that were in his group.
It's going to create a bit of beef. Ben just called you fat, bro.
That's not what I said. But I remember Craig telling me that when he then struggled to get his skin folds down to where they wanted them, he was just so miserable that he didn't run very fast. And that he ran his fastest when he was just at his kind of nearer to his natural body composition. When he wasn't just literally starving himself, he was getting enough calories in to recover. And I remember him telling me that, and me thinking, that strikes a chord.
Yeah. So that's so steak or fajitas or casserole or whatever for dinner, then some ice cream at night.
Yeah.
So we've covered some training, your weekly training program, which is very interesting. Food. That kind of makes sense. That was kind of what I was expecting. It's especially for someone with a massive training load and who is underweight generally in their sport. It's just going to be based, calorie intake is the main objective, not weighing your flipping broccoli stems. In terms of the stuff that I'm super interested to kind of take a deep dive in now, which is all of these little biohacks, which again, you were my first kind of experience of those tiny little things again. So now it's 5 to 12. I've already spent 15 minutes in front of your infrared light and had a rolled up, pea of shilajit minerals and then put them under my tongue. And that's just today. So we could spend hours talking about this, bro. But if you can give me like a rough synopsis of the top kind of like biohacks and recovery hacks that you've kind of acquired over the last few years, the stuff that's really working for you.
Okay, yeah. So I'll start simple and I'll go to the more, the more unusual stuff. So number one is sleep. Most people don't sleep well. Most people think they get enough sleep, but they still don't sleep well. So obviously you need enough sleep. It needs to be quality sleep.
So quality and quantity are not the same thing?
No. Okay. No. So there are a number of things, blocking light out of your room, cutting out blue light in the evenings, which is easier said than done. So I can't cut screens out in the evenings because I've got a business to run, but I wear blue light blocking glasses.
The orange tinted ones? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, for a few hours before bed. I try and cut out caffeine in the afternoon. I try and black the room out. And I try and get the room to a right temperature. One thing that I've messed around with is opening my nasal passage with either tape or like there's a rubber internal thing that you can use to open your nostrils so there's more nasal breathing, and taping my mouth as well. I've messed around with mouth taping.
So you're trying to create an environment where you're just breathing through your nose through the night. Breathing. Yeah. So if you breathe through your mouth, that'll be like a bit of a stress response, sympathetic nervous system. If you're breathing through your nose, parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest state. So you're putting your body in a position where it feels safe enough to kind of to simmer down a little bit and go through all the adaptation processes it needs to do from the day. Is that kind of the theory? Yeah,
that's the theory. So the theory is that breathing through the nose is parasympathetic and it's going to aid recovery. You're going to get more vasodilation throughout the body. There's a theory that there's a kind of nitric oxide reservoir in there as well, which again helps vasodilation and recovery. People talk about having more vivid dreams when they're nasal breathing, when they're mouth taped. So I attempt that. It's just really hard because I just pull it all off in the night in my sleep.
So blue light, nasal breathing when you sleep. So that's sleep done. What other kind of biohacks are working for you?
Sleep. These are the basics rather than biohacks, but yeah, diet and nutrition. You obviously need a balanced diet with the right macros and the right micro minerals and vitamins. So I don't believe we necessarily get those all from diet. So I use a lot of magnesium spray and Epsom salt baths because I think that's something that's a lot of people are deficient in. I get enough sunlight for vitamin D.
The spray in the bath, so for magnesium, if I can just go back to that.
So yeah, the evidence would suggest you're going to absorb more magnesium transdermally than you are through your gut, or
so
at least
through
it's
the
more
skin.
Efficient. Yeah. At least it's more efficient, yeah. And I believe as well, I think magnesium and calcium are picked up by the same receptor in the gut. And most of the time we have so much calcium through dairy in our diets at the moment that just usually essentially pushes the magnesium out.
Okay. So magnesium, so what else in terms of the stuff that you can't get from food, what else are you supplementing?
So I use shilajit resin, which is something that's very recent that I'm using. I use a company called Nature Provides, which is from your neck of the woods.
Yep, it's down the road from me. Big up Forest Road.
Yeah, and they've been great because they sent me the purity certificate.
So what is shilajit resin?
It's rock resin, so it oozes out of rocks in the Himalayas. The best way to describe it is it's essentially a 15,000-year-old ecosystem that's been pressurized, a little bit like oil, and is now like oozing out of the rocks. So within that, you have all of the vitamins and minerals that were involved in that ecosystem at the kind of the right percentages. And there's fulvic acid and humic acid in it, which essentially chelate those minerals. So it's basically a full spectrum organic mineral source, which is kind of quite rare in this day and age. Most of our foods are fortified with inorganic minerals. It's just not as good for you. And so yeah, I got into it through guys that I was talking to through the kind of alt health world. And so I thought I'd try some. I found this Nature Provides company in the UK, and I started using it, essentially putting it under my tongue, so like sublingual. And I'd feel it could be a placebo, but I would feel a bit of a boost off it, and that's very unusual off a supplement. I find off a vitamin or mineral supplement. So yeah, that's been one thing. So that's another that comes underneath diet and supplementation.
So it's purer. So it's basically a mineral supplement that's purer and it's kind of more concentrated, and it's in resin form. So you just
and it's
roll it up into a little pea.
And it's completely natural. The issue you have to you find with it is there's a lot of people selling it, and you need to get the purity certificate because it can have high levels of heavy metals in it. So that's why the first thing I got off Nature Provides was the purity certificate.
So Nature Provides is the name of the company that you get your Shilajit from. Perfect. So I'll put that in the description below.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And then one of the things that I've introduced this year, which has been great, has been red light and near infrared light therapy. I've been very lucky that a company called Care Lamps, which are again UK based.
Big up Care Lamps.
Yeah, they've been amazing. They've sorted me out with a couple of lamps to try. One of them with two wavelengths, light wavelengths. One of them with like a full wavelengths, which are basically in line with the research on the plethora of benefits that you get from red light. So their latest light has got the 4 different wavelengths. So that's the one I'm using at the moment. And yeah, I've noticed a load of benefits. And it was only a few years ago people would poo-poo this as something that didn't work, but there's a lot of research coming out now with some marked benefits. I mean, it's mostly been used for skin appearance and healing, and that's where most of the evidence lies. But it does seem that these spectrums get deeper into the body.
Deeper than just the skin.
Yeah, so you're going to get pain relief with osteoarthritis. You're going to get relief of tendon pain. So I found that with my Achilles. If I get it on full spectrum, I stand in front of it, my Achilles, which I have trouble with, feel a lot better.
Okay.
And then
straight away?
After about 10 minutes.
So this is because obviously I've been in yours a couple of times now. There's a massive light panel, and there's a couple of different wavelengths, and it's effectively these wavelengths go into the skin, penetrate the skin. They effectively can heal damaged skin, but there is also now research that suggests that it's more than just skin deep, that it can actually get to things like connective tissues and start to help heal tendons and stuff.
Yeah, and there's some research that came out suggesting that it will increase sprint speed, muscular power output, recovery when used on major muscle groups. Yeah, which is pretty crazy, right? So yeah, the evidence is building around it, but I've found, the main benefit for me has just been the general sense of well-being. And I think that falls in a little bit into our light environment as well. And this is an area that I'm by no means an expert in, but our light environment is relatively unhealthy in this day and age. Obviously,
because you spend so much time indoors.
Indoors with artificial light, with high flicker, LEDs, blue light. It's not the type of the spectrum of light that we'd be in naturally. So number one is sunlight. I'll try and get as much sunlight as I can, but we live in Britain, so it's not easy.
Yeah, very true.
And using the red light, it does feel like you're getting something you're missing out.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the idea is the red light hits whatever structure it's hitting, right? And it stimulates the mitochondria to produce more energy. And as we all know from GCSE science, that's the powerhouse of the cell, right?
There we go.
So basically, whatever you're hitting, you're just upregulating the energy production in that and turnover of cells.
So that's every day for like 15 minutes?
Yeah, maybe even longer, depending on how much I'll do front, back.
Okay.
Yeah, face.
So we've got some general kind of sleep hygiene stuff there with blue light blocking glasses, block out the light of the room, etc. We've got magnesium in the form of sprays and Epsom salt baths. We've got some Shilajit. We have the red light therapy.
And then probably the modality I've been using for the longest. I was an early adopter of EMS, so it was electromuscle stimulation.
Right.
We now call that NMS because I'm really lucky to work with a company called Neurocool.
Big up Neurocool.
Another UK-based company.
Big up all the companies today.
They're now branching out worldwide.
Okay.
And they have a number of different devices. They're market leaders. And they combine NMS, which is neuromuscular stimulation, which will actually get full twitches and contraction of the muscle. PNS, which is essentially nerve stimulation, which people would call similar to TENS.
TENS, yeah.
And then microcurrent, which is kind of more of a recent technology. which is huge for muscular recovery.
Right.
It's huge for getting rid of trauma and bruising. So I'll essentially wire myself up, and you'll have seen the devices. They're sticky pads.
Yeah.
And then you start twitching the muscle away.
And the purpose of this is to flush out like
I'll use it mostly
lactic acid, toxins, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Help muscles recover.
Yeah, so I use it mostly for blood flow.
For blood flow, right?
Yeah,
okay. Which again, just everything, all the adaptation processes that need to go through, everything being flushed out. Shuttling proteins and stuff to try and replenish and rebuild the tissue. That's basically the purpose of these things, is just to kind of assist with that process.
Definitely, yeah. But then I use it in a slightly different manner as well, and it's what one of the NeuroCore units, which is wireless, is really useful for. I'll have it in my training bag, and there'll be a couple of little, and this, you could see this as a hack, a couple of little activations that you can use. So if you're getting bad knees, if I'm going to do a knee dominant exercise, I'll stick it on my VMO, and I'll do a couple of maximal contractions through the EMS unit, through the NeuroCore unit, and then that will activate that VMO, which is being shut off because of the pain coming from my knee.
Right.
And then my squatting is going to be easier. Similar if my
So you're doing that in the gym. So you warmed up doing it in the gym just before you lift.
Yeah, because it's so easy. It's wireless. You just stick it on, bang, get them stimmed. I do that with a number of my athletes as well. People who have had lateral ankle sprains, ATFL, your typical lateral ankle sprain. Usually they are then unstable through their ankle. So a lot of the time their foot contacts aren't very good. They're compromised slightly. And so then if you...
Why? Because the connective tissues are permanently stretched. It's not tight.
Often because they don't have a ligament there anymore.
If it's completely ruptured and it's gone. So it's just less stable.
Or even if it was just damaged, it just doesn't quite heal up.
It doesn't quite, In
which case the perineals take up a bit of that slack. So if you wire them up perineals, then that often improves your foot contact or your stability in the ankle. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Okay, so red light, the previous EMS, now NMS, neuromuscular stimulation.
Yeah, NMS is the term that you use.
And that's NeuroCore, the company?
NeuroCore, yeah.
The She Legit, the sleep stuff, again, mate, we could go into, do a much deeper dive in all of this stuff, but it's, I just wanted to get you on here to kind of cover the brief overview of the stuff that has worked for you in your elite sporting career over the last 10 years. As again, you were the guy that kind of introduced me to all these extra little hacks, and your process of kind of self-education and research was always something that caught my attention, because on our downtime between kind of track sessions and stuff, when Ben and myself were sliding, there was just, I don't know, there was always something that you were doing to basically recover quicker or replenish or something. And it was so great to see. But I won't take up any more of your time, mate. We covered training, nutrition, the recovery stuff has been amazing. How is training going right now? Do you feel confident for the games?
Yeah, very confident. Training's going well.
Fantastic. Good man. Good man. Well, in that case, I'll let you crack on with your day. Thank you for your time, brother.
Pleasure, mate.
See you in Beijing.